Today's radio KD8TTE is going to talk to the county emergency coordinators about how to prepare for the simulated emergency test for the Ohio section in the year 2020. We'll go point by point how you can get ready to have the most successful operation. Stick around.
Black Swan, Black Swan.
So in our last video, we were talking about the simulated emergency test and how the ARES and the traffic nets work together to get the job done overall. Today, we're going to talk very specifically at what needs to happen at the county level. So ECs, this video is for you. You need to be able to get prepared to be able to operate, and this is going to help you to do that. So a quick reminder, the simulated emergency test is the annual exercise, and it has three goals: to determine the strengths and weaknesses of ARES groups at the local and also section levels. We also want to provide a public demonstration of the amateur radio service and our ability to work in a disaster response or emergency condition. Also to help the volunteers, our radio amateurs, to be able to gain valuable experience in realistic disaster response and emergency operating conditions. 6 things we're going to cover in this video today. You need to register. You need to be able to receive an activation. You need to be able to establish roles. You need to be able to establish a schedule. You need to mobilize or demobilize your people, and of course you need to report your activity. It's a big part of the simulated emergency test. So the first order of business is to look at the question of registration. The SET in the Ohio section this year, like last year, is part of the Black Swan communication exercise. This is a larger exercise that gives us the ability to have a common operating picture so that we can get a more realistic sense of play as we are going through this process. It's pretty straightforward. Just go to the www.blackswancomx.org website, and under 2020 you'll see where you can register your organization to play. It's important that you do that because the controllers of the exercise need to know that you're out there. Otherwise, you're not going to get the warning that comes up before activation that says, hey, we're going to have a mission for you, and confirm with you what your force strength is and when you're going to be able to operate and so on. So that gets us into our next issue, which is going to be receiving the activation. Before exercise play begins on Saturday, there's going to be contact. This is going to be in the scenario before there is a loss of communication infrastructure and so on. So there's going to be a phone call, an email, something along those lines that is going to be an actor that is part of the exercise control team who will be playing the role of a served agency contact, describing what the mission is going to be and what we need to have your ARES group activated for. The call is going to come in from somebody that is going to be acting from a served agency. In many cases, these are going to be people that work in served agencies, so it's going to be realistic. It's not just going to be somebody making something up about what it might sound like. This is going to be somebody who actually knows how to make these activations happen. Once you've got the information about the activation that's requested, you need to establish the roles that are going to need to be filled to get that mission done. For example, let's suppose that you're going to need to activate at a hospital. You need to have an operating position there. Do you want to have one operator? Maybe you want to have 2 operators there. Are there going to need to be 2 positions? Maybe you've got 2 different hospitals that need to talk to one another, in which case you might need to have 4 operators. If you have multiple sites in county, are you going to be able to work that with VHF simplex? Do you have the ability for them to talk to each other that way? Is there going to need to be a county net to get the job at hand taken care of? That might be the case. And if that is the case, are you going to need to have a net control station? Certainly. Are you going to need to have relay stations? Because when you're operating simplex, you may not have everybody able to hear each other. So there's a couple of options that you're going to need to work out there. In your county net, do you have a liaison to the district? If you don't, Is there a district net that you can go to? If there isn't, then you need to establish liaison at the section level, because that's the only way that you're going to get messages in and out of your county during exercise play. So you need to establish that connection and to have a way for those messages to get in and out of the county. So that probably means you need to have an HF station, and is that going to be a liaison that's part of the net, or are you going to have at the operating location the ability to go to HF? The configuration is going to depend on your capabilities and the operators that you've got available. Of course, making good use of those resources means that you need to have a good schedule so that you don't have everybody active all at once standing around with nothing to do and then having nobody around to take care of something when there is real work to be done 6 hours later. So we're going to give a couple of examples, the first of which is going to be for a single site in the county, 32 hours of operation with no county net. You can get that job done with 16 operators. So in this example, we have just the one site. We have operators paired up, so no radio operator is on site alone. And every operator is working 4-hour shifts. And every operator has only one shift. So while we're covering 32 hours as far as the county is concerned, no operator is working more than 4 hours. Critical element here, of course, is that you're setting the hours. Again, we want to make sure that we are being realistic, but we are also testing ourselves. So set some operating hours that make some sense given the fact that we're talking about a disaster response kind of scenario. Now, in the case of a second schedule here, the Schedule B, we have a 16-hour operation that is going to take the same 16 operators. The difference is that in this case, we have a county net, which means we need to have a net control station. We have a separate liaison that's going up to the district and back. And then, of course, we've got a relay station just in case we need to tie any of these other stations together. They can't hear each other. So this gives you a pretty good example of how you can configure your local net as needed, or your local operation if you don't need a net and you have a single operating position that can go directly to the district for liaison purposes. Again, the goals of the SCT are important to remember here. To determine strengths and weaknesses, we need to do both the things that we know will do well, as well as things that we don't necessarily know that will do well. Things that are realistic, but might be difficult. Things that we haven't practiced as much as we would like. Do those things as well. The weaknesses are not things that we can hide from, but by having us quantify exactly what the weakness is, it helps us to understand what our training priority is for the coming year. That way, when we get to the SET for next year, this year's weakness can become next year's strength. And in that way, we are year by year building up our capabilities and the utility that we have when it comes to serving our agencies and the public. We're providing a public demonstration, which means we need to do more than make an appearance. Showing up for an hour, 2 hours, something like that, and then just saying, okay, we're done, does not demonstrate to the public or to the agencies that we have the ability to operate in the aftermath of a disaster. That's going to be a slog. We don't necessarily need to have a lot of operators active all at once, but it's important that the service, that ARES, is there and is able to establish that station and to maintain that station so that communications can be effectively maintained throughout the length of the disaster response. And of course, the third thing, making sure that we give valuable experience to our volunteer operators. They're not going to get the experience unless they're actually on the radio. So take advantage of the fact that we've got all of these hours and put people on schedules so they have a chance to work the radio. They have a chance to originate a message that's being given to them by somebody who's working at an agency. They have an opportunity to deliver a message that's come from the radio and has to be given to a person at the agency. Get everybody worked into the schedule, give them a chance to gain some experience, and that's how we're going to help overall to get more competent operators across the board. Mobilization and demobilization this year is going to be pretty easy because instead of going to different physical sites, we're actually just going to have things take place via video conference. That's going to help if there's any concerns about the facilities that we would be going into being too close, and if there's COVID kinds of concerns, we're not going to have to worry about that. Every site, instead of being a physical location, is going to be a Google Meet, and reporting for duty is just going to be a matter of joining the video conference. Being relieved of duty is a simple matter. When somebody else shows up to relieve you, you just leave the conference. You don't have to drive for an hour to get back home or anything like that. The first radio operator, when we put them in pairs, is able to perform a different job from the second radio operator. So in this case, with a pair, we can have the first radio operator is able to talk to staff. Somebody comes in, I have a message that needs to go out. Okay, let me get this message straight. Where is it going? What is it that you want to say? Get your name and your title and all that sort of stuff, and they will originate the message to be transmitted. At the same time, there might be messages that have come in by the radio, and that first operator can say, okay, while you're here, I have these messages for you. And the player who is acting as the staff member is able to take those and deal with them. All of that's happening at the same time that the second radio operator is actually on the radio, actively moving messages, that is to say, relaying the traffic in and out of the site. And so that way we're able to make sure that things are continuing to move, and we're able to make sure that all of our operators, by switching who's the first and who's the second radio operator during their shift, will be able to get practice originating and delivering, as well as relaying those messages. Moving on to the last thing that's going to happen. Once the whole thing is completely finished, we're going to want to take away some things that we can learn, but we need to report our activity up to the league. So an emergency coordinator at the county is going to need to complete this Form A. It comes from the league, and it's going to report all of the activity that took place by the EC, which is going to show things like how much origination, how many messages were originated, how many messages were delivered, and there's a bunch of questions in there about whether you had a PIO and whether you use digital modes and that sort of thing. We're going to make sure that you have digital modes in use, and in fact, that's going to be a requirement to be able to get some of these messages. They're sometimes going to be kind of complicated. If you do have a net in your county, you want to make sure that your net manager, and it might be you or it might be a separate net manager, but in any case, the net manager of the county net needs to complete Form B. Form B is not just the traffic net SET form, it is the net manager form. In Form B, that's where there's going to be a record of the messages that are actually relayed. So if you have a station in the county and you are originating and delivering messages, you're going to get credit for that on Form A. If you have a county net and those messages are being relayed from the site to your liaison station over the county net, you're not going to get credit for those messages being relayed unless you complete a Form B. If you don't have a county net in operation for the SET, it's not a problem because the net that you are taking those messages to and taking the messages from will have a net manager that completes the Form B. That's how we're going to make sure that we get the credit in the Ohio section for origination, delivery, and also relay. So now is the time to begin your team's readiness. You should already be into it, but if you're not, you definitely need to make that happen. It is now past the 1st of September, and so we need to get going. Because it's an exercise, you know when it's going to happen. So you can actually start on the schedule without even knowing exactly what the mission is. So that's a nice thing about it. So be familiar with what the operation is about generally, how we're working. That's the purpose of this video, the other videos that I've been making. And so that should give you some familiarity with what to expect. Readying the team now also means that you have to get them used to working at the district net. Not everybody, but some people in the organization need to be able to go to the district net. If the district does not have a net, you need to go to the section net. There is not, if you don't have one already, there isn't going to be time to establish one, figure out your procedures and all that kind of stuff. Go to the section net. Your best bet for where you're going to go to the section net, where you're going to have the most flexibility, is going to be on the Buckeye net. And we are holding mixed mode sessions. That happens on Thursday at 7 p.m. and Saturday and Sunday at 1 p.m. That's our present operating schedule. Buckeye Net will be active during the SET for long hours, so we're going to be able to make sure that you can be supported. The Ohio Single Sideband Net is another option available to you, and they are able to move radiograms. That will be part of the exercise, but there will be some things that are going to be more complicated and that you're going to want to move with digital. That means get used to working the Buckeye Net. So if you haven't seen it yet, do make sure you get to the BuckeyeNet website. There is a signal operating instruction document there, and there's also a set of macros that will work for FLDigi that will help you to get onto the right frequency, use the right modes, and so on. Again, don't just try to jump on BuckeyeNet and expect things to happen. This is something that you want to practice. Even if you're used to working NBEMs on other nets, the fact that we are controlling the net by voice and then having the traffic move digitally on a different channel is going to make the operation quite a bit different. It gives us the ability to parallelize so we can move a lot more traffic a lot more quickly, but it also means that there are some procedures that you're not going to have in a single mode operation net. Do practice with us. The County Information Report Project 20 is something that we've been doing for the last 10 weeks now to try to get everybody up to speed with the idea of messaging, moving things in and out of the county. If you've not been doing that, or if your district has not been doing that well, then make sure that you get with the program now. And that's going to be the reason to come to the BuckeyeNet sessions, because there will be messages for you, and you can take messages and send them back. That's the place to do it. So we can see that there are a lot of districts that don't have 100% participation. And so if your county is not actually moving messages to and from, then the question is going to be, is your district actually getting a rep to the BuckeyeNet? In any case, if it's not working, then your county should get to the BuckeyeNet, because you're going to need to get those messages whether the district is actually providing you the representation or not. So if you've got questions about that, you want to see the BuckeyeNet website. And of course, you can ask me any questions. Again, do that before the SET. We can't handle 10,000 questions that come in just the day or two or even the week ahead of time. Now is time to get going. So the points that we made here today hopefully will stick. Register with the Black Swan exercise controllers. That keeps you from having to do the work of controlling the exercise, and you get to play radio. You're going to get an activation. You're going to have roles to establish and a schedule to establish. You can actually do that stuff ahead of time because it's an exercise. You know when things are going to happen. And also when you register, we're going to ask you what hours of operation your county wants. And so that's going to help us to make sure that when we make that call, the activation is going to be something that will fit just exactly what your level of play is going to look like. Mobilization, demobilization, again, easy peasy this year. Just need to make sure that you can get into Google Meets. And then make sure that you do have the reports. The Form A, the emergency coordinators need to do in any case. If you have a county net, be sure that your net manager completes a Form B and submits that to the league. As part of the reporting, I will be coming back around to everybody in the days after the SET to ask for things about what went well, what did not go well, what would they have liked to see done differently, what would they like to see for next year. And that's going to help us, again, not only to establish what our training priorities are for the coming year, but to make sure that we're doing so in a way that is going to be interesting and is going to help the most people get the most out of the time and money that they are investing in the ARES program. if you've got questions, if you've got comments, please do not hesitate to contact me. I am KD8TTE. You can contact me by WinLink, by internet at KD8TTE at pm.me, and of course also by radiogram. I hope this has been helpful. Please share this video with other emergency coordinators. Please comment, please like, and subscribe to the channel. Make sure that you do not miss any of these videos. They're going to help you not just with the SET, but with your emergency preparedness and with your operation as an emergency communicator. Take care. Radio KD8TTE out.